Hey, what's up, YouTube? Today we're going to be going over Water Merlin, which is one of my personal favorite decks, and I know it is an absolute crowd favorite amongst the Discord and the community. I thought that, hey, let's dive into it. Let's mess around with what I've been playing and testing, and hopefully we can go from there and build it to be even better. First off, we are going to be playing Lorraine level 1, and our main goal is to get to Merlin Kingslayer level 3. Once she is live, she is the strongest champion in the game right now. The amount of advantage that she creates as the game goes on is just insane, and she gets to swing for an additional 2 as well as draw a card every time her level counters are even. So pretty sweet. We play 3 swords. We play Sword of Seeking, which is what's coming out every time we level up to Lorraine because it's our only 0-drop sword. Play Drawn Blade just so that we can continue to grind and draw more cards, which is what Water wants to do. And then our big finisher in this deck and one of our main win cons is Erendite Azure Blade. We play, I believe, 22 Floating Memory in this deck. So we get to a point where we are using cards to put a bunch into our graveyard and then use our Erendite to make some really big swings with Merlin. Our flex spots are Terrafring to help us push the game a little longer when we're against the swarm decks or super fast aggro decks. And then Nullifying Lantern with the way that layering works, and when you fracturize this card, it keeps its effect on the stack. So we don't have to play Quicksilver Grail to protect our Nullifying Lantern. We just blow it up, turn it into a fractal, and stop those graveyard fire decks from being able to utilize all the cards they've put in there. Pretty crazy strong. The new Scepter of Lumina. Now, this is the card that is really pushing Water to the next level. In this shell, sure, the extra chip damage, 4 damage every time we level up. Every now and then we'll get 4, 8 in. I mean, hey, maybe you'll even see 12. But the big thing with this is we get this out, and then we can tap 5 to banish Scepter of Lumina and draw 2 cards. So keeping our hand full, keeping it having answers for every situation, and just pushing ourselves into the late game. This card really is an all-star moving forward in Water. The Majestic Spirit, one of our main win cons as well. In this deck, we answer pretty much everything our opponent is doing and then take over the game slowly through incremental advantage. And the Majestic Spirit is a great way to stabilize against some decks and also put them on a clock. So Majestic Spirit does a ton of work. It's still a great card. We can't turbo it out quite as easy as we could before by drawing a million cards with Avarice, but Majestic Spirit still a great and powerful finisher. And then Grand Crusader Ring. Don't need to talk too much about it. GCR is the GOAT. So let's jump right into the deck. And the first thing I am going to talk about today is the Floating Memory. Look at them all. There's a ton. So we're just going to kind of put them all into view and talk about them individually. But we have Mind Freeze, Fracturize, Stalwart Shieldmate, Fast Cure, Idle Thoughts, and then I'm going to talk about Refracting Missile after we talk about these guys. So, Mind Freeze, being able to time walk our opponents once we get to a certain level with Merlin and they try to, continue to tempo us out or push into their late game, being able to Mind Freeze, which is banish level cards at random from target opponent's memory, return those cards to their memory at the beginning of their next end phase. It's very powerful. It basically just lets us take 2 turns in a row, which sometimes when we get Erendite out, we can play Erendite, swing for a huge number, Mind Freeze them, and then kill them on the next turn when they can't do anything. So super, super strong. Fracturize, an absolute 4 of in all Water decks. It is Floating Memory, but it also is a spell that is fast, and target item or weapon becomes a Cleric Fractal Fantasia with reservable and loses all other abilities. This is, in combo with Nullifying Lantern, a 1-2 punch against fire graveyard decks. There's nothing stronger than it in the game currently. They have no way to interact with it, so if we just blow up our Nullifying Lantern, their graveyard is offline for the rest of the game. And it's also Floating Memory. It can deal with opponent's swords. We can turn our own things into fractals. Just very versatile. Stalwart Shieldmate, honestly, it's just an annoying ally that they have to kill, or late game, it's just another Floating Memory that we can dump into the yard. So sometimes it can give us that one extra turn we need because they couldn't swing through it with a big attack and they had to kill it. And then Other times it can just be floating memory for us. So it's becoming quite the staple in the format. Idle Thoughts. This is a turn 1 into Frostworn Paladin, which is a great combo. Being able to get a 1-drop out, get a 3/4 intercept on board, draw a card, super powerful. Also, it just lets us fix the top of our deck, and when we go into the Fractal package, it'll make a lot of sense. Fast Cure. Fast Cure lets us continuously stay alive against those aggro decks that are pressuring us quickly. We're able to gain a little bit of life as long as our influence, is lower than our opponents. And also, it plays around raccoons. It's a fast cleric spell that allows us to put a floating memory in the yard and then utilize it at the beginning of our turn. So, super cool. Refracting Missile. Now, this is honestly, sometimes in this deck, another win con in this. We play 3 Fractal of Intrusion, as well as 4 Fractal of Insight. And Fractal of Insight is a crazy strong card. It lets us idle thoughts and then put 2 cards that we definitely don't need in that match to the bottom, and lets us get to what we need to. Also lets us fix the top of our deck, and I know I'm a broken record, I talk about it all the time, but in this game, being able to fix the top of your deck to draw the cards you need, super powerful. Fractal of Intrusion is a card that I'm very excited to try out. In Magic the Gathering, I'm a huge, I love all of the cards like Thoughtseize, Hand Hate, things like that, playing as like a black mage and everything that comes from that style of gameplay. This deck has a little access to it with Fractal of Intrusion. And Fractal of Intrusion, on enter, you may banish a card with floating memory, which we play a lot of. And when you do, look at your opponent's memory and discard a card from it. So if there's a deck we're playing against, maybe they're going to have a couple of cards that are a real problem for us. Fractal of Intrusion does give us the opportunity to look at their memory if they put it down and get rid of it. So super strong card. In the right situations, can be absolutely backbreaking. Now we're going to go to the Ally Suite. And the first one is the best blue card in the game, Frostworn Paladin. Doesn't need too much of an introduction. It's a 2/3 interceptor. On enter, you may banish a card with floating memory from your graveyard. If you do, draw a card and put a buff counter on Frostworn Paladin. Just an absolutely efficient attacker and defender. 3/4 beat stick that also draws you a card when you have floating memory is nothing to scoff at. Card is incredibly powerful, and yeah, I mean, you've seen us play a ton of Ace and Protector, and this is Blue's Ace and Protector, honestly. It feels the same way, it's that powerful, and it can end a game in a hurry. Specifically with Scepter Illumina now, when we're doing 4 damage every time we level up, if we have like Frostborn Paladins that go unchecked, we can beat them down pretty quick. Tide Diviner. This card is how we end the game. It is part of our main combo of playing this late game once we're to a higher level. Once we get there, we can discard a bunch of cards off the top of our deck, put a bunch of floating memory in the yard, and then power up our Erendite for those supercharged swords attacks to end the game. And lastly, as far as non-Crux allies go, a 4 of Dungeon Guide, because in this deck we are trying to get the Merlin level 3, and if we can do it at a discounted rate, keep more cards in hand, and also get there faster, I think we're in a really, really good spot. She doesn't need too much of an introduction. She's been a staple in this game for any deck that's going to an advanced element, and I don't see her going anywhere anytime soon. So let's talk about the last spells of the deck before we get into the Crux package. We play 4 Resolute Stands. This card is probably the main lifeline of the deck. Against all these swarm decks, against a random Onsol deck you might see, or really anything that's trying to kill you with attack damage. Resolute Stand is a card that once we're level 2, we can actually play it for free at the cost of losing a draw next turn, but with Merlin, we're able to draw as well sometimes, so that becomes very powerful. Resolute Stand just helps us get to the end game. We have a super strong end game, so if we can get to the point where we're playing our finishers, we're keeping a ton of cards in hand and able to answer anything our opponents do, Resolute Stand is one of the key pieces to get us there. Next is another key piece, and that's Frostbind. Frostbind is the first and only counterspell currently in the game. It's a 2-drop, fast, action cleric spell reaction that says negate target card activation unless its controller pays 2. Banish the card that had its activation negated this way. So it is a mana leak of sorts, if you're familiar with Magic the Gathering. Mana Leak has wreaked havoc in some formats in the past. So this is kind of the boogeyman of the deck. This is the check that every time you play against the opponent, every single turn, they're thinking, okay, how many cards do they have? Oh, they have 2 cards in hand and a Fractal. Okay, they've got access to 2. They might have Frostbind. And they have to play around this all the time. Even if you don't have it, if they're going to be thinking about it. And that is a huge power move for Water. Frostbind. If your opponent wants to go too fast, we stop them. If your opponent wants to be a little too risky, we have access to this. And this can absolutely break some decks' backs in certain situations and let you just take over the game from there. So Counter Magic is incredibly strong in competitive card games. And then lastly, we've got Sudden Steal, and we play 3 of them. Sudden Steal for us, most of the time, will be a free 5 damage swing or a 7 damage swing. It's really good on Merlin's off turns where she doesn't get a big bonus, but it's really powerful when she also gets the bonus on top of it. It also works really well with the card I'm about to show you that allows us to attack multiple times in a turn. So Sudden Steal has become a real staple in Merlin decks because our level gets high, and with efficiency, we end up getting to swing for free for 5. So let's go to the Crux cards. We play 4 Ghost of Pendragon, 3 Incarnate Majesties, and 2 Spirit's Blessings. So when we draw a Spirit's Blessing, we know, hey, we can do our Erendite OTK, we can do an Erendite Sudden Steal OTK, or do a ton of damage when we need to. Spirit's Blessing reads, as an additional cost to activate this card, return a Regalia you control to its owner's material deck. Wake up your champion, draw a card. So we're able to swing, pay 1, play a Spirit's Blessing, put our Sword of Seeking back in our material deck, draw a card. Our Merlin untaps, and then we're able to swing again with that Erendite that maybe we put 4 or 5 counters on, or maybe that Sudden Steal in our hand. It lets us pump out a lot of damage out of nowhere, and a lot of opponents don't expect it, and it lets you close the game pretty quickly. So it's super powerful in the right situations, which is why we only play 2, because any more than that, I think is just too much. And it makes our deck, I'm trying to keep the Crux count in this particular version of Merlin, which there's a lot of different ways to play it. But I think that this one is a great place to start, especially if you're just getting into Merlin. This deck can do a lot of things and play out of a lot of situations. So just a very consistent, low Crux count Merlin deck. Incarnate Majesty, this is how we get out our Majestic Spirit. We play 3. We do not have a way to recur these like we did in last decks with Crux Sight, and maybe that'll change, but currently when we draw this, we know, okay, we're going to get to a point where we can bring this out, and sometimes we do need it, so that's why we play 3, so we can get there quicker with the card draw and everything else we do, and hopefully get to a point where we can get out our Majestic Spirit and stay alive. And then the most important Crux card in our deck is definitely Ghost of Pendragon. Ghost of Pendragon is the new hotness when it comes to Crux. Since Avarice is banned, this is the way now that we can really start to get big advantage and start that advantage engine of drawing tons of cards. Ghost of Pendragon is a 3/4 for 2 that on enter you can return a Regalia you control to the material deck, and if you do, draw 2 cards. So this is a way that we can continue to dig while also fighting for board, or maybe even pushing that extra damage that we need to set up a big Ghost of Pendragon, draw 2, swing with Sudden Steal, play Spirit's Blessing, untap, swing with a sword. There's a lot of damage that we can push in the late game out of nowhere with this deck, and that is what people, I guess, don't expect from Water, and so that's kind of how we end the game. Ghost of Pendragon, just a great way to draw, as well as pressure your opponent a little bit or fight for board best you can, because in this deck we don't have access to a lot of board sweep. So we try to fight our opponent's board as we go. And there's a few different options. There's a few other cards that I'm really interested in testing, but currently this is the main deck that I've been testing with, and I've been playing against a lot of decks, and honestly, it's felt really good. So you could definitely take it a different way, but I think it's a great place to start. Now, before I go to the sideboard, my buddy Isaac's got a few words to say.
Hey everyone, it's Isaac, and if you want to support us, get merch, or pre-order the next set from GA, then you should check out our website. Over on our website, you'll find stickers, t-shirts, playmats, and material deck sleeves, and the next set of Grand Archive for pre-order. So make sure to check that out. Also, if you like content, then you should check out our Patreon. Over there, we have an exclusive podcast series, extra gameplay videos, and articles written by us to help your competitive gameplay. In any case, if you like what we do here on YouTube, then don't forget to like and subscribe, as it does help us out a lot. Thank you.
Welcome back to the video. So for the sideboard, the last thing we are going to talk about, and honestly, sideboards are hard right now. The reason being is because this meta is so unknown. There's so many decks, so many brews being brought out right now with the new ban, and we're trying to figure out the best way to go about, getting things online and really working through what needs to be done. For this deck, you guys probably saw the Geist deck that Caben talked about in our 24-hour stream. It was basically a Water Merlin deck like this, but it only played Intangible Geist when it came to the Crux cards. Intangible Geist is an incredibly powerful control mirror card where on enter you may choose any amount of Regalia cards from your banishment and put them into your material deck. And also he has class bonus, which we'll always have, prevent all attack damage that would be dealt to Intangible Geist. So this card really is powerful. It lets us recur all of those cards, maybe our Scepter of Lumina, our GCR, our Drawn Blade, maybe even our Erendite. Get these cards back and really able to, push forward and do what we got to do to end the game. So Intangible Geist. Right now, I am messing around with 4 Snow Fairy. Like I said, there's a lot of cards I really want to try. And when I'm testing them, I really like to put in a bunch of them into my sideboard so I can really get a feel and make sure I draw them in the games I want to. I think Snow Fairy is a really awesome, hard to answer card that can battle against aggro, can battle against those big, scary, a lot of people are on Sylvie. This thing can just tap a crawl, and if they can't deal with it, which, a lot of times they can, but if they can't, then Snow Fairy gets to just hang out. Their crawl is offline, and you're in a really powerful spot. So Snow Fairy, it's a 1/2 stealth for 3, just like the other fairies. On enter, rest target ally you don't control. That ally doesn't wake up during its controller's wake-up phase, as long as you control Snow Fairy. So basically, she comes down, she taps something, and as long as she isn't dealt with, that thing stays tapped. So pretty good against aggro to push us into the late game to where we are prepared to end the game and really start taking over. Lastly, I play Crystal of Empowerment out of the side. And the reason being is because there's some games where those extra 2 levels to get out our Majestic Spirit is just exactly what we need. And that's the only reason this card is in the deck. Sure, we can play this and use a Tide Diviner and put 2 more cards. And maybe we do that. I don't know. But most of the time, this is going to come in a matchup where you really need to get Majestic Spirit out just as quick as you can. And if you can do that, boom, Crystal of Empowerment is exactly the card you're looking for. So, with all that being said, Water Merlin does seem like it is a real contender moving forward. And I definitely will be tinkering with this list. And I look forward to any feedback or ideas you guys may have because the Water archetype is so unexplored. And there's so much that can be done. And this is just a place to start. So, thank you guys so much for all the support you've given us. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ding that little notification bell so every time we post something, you get the notification and get to go check it out. Like I said, we appreciate all the support, and we can't do any of this without you. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And this is Terry signing off. I'll catch you on the next one. Take it easy.